Hello, I'm Steve, also known as Tea Break Knitter on social media. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how I use a marker thread to help me count my stitches at cast on, and also to help me join in the round without twisting the cast on edge. I hope you find this useful. I'll show you how I cast on in the round when I'm working on a piece that has a very large number of stitches. I'll be using a twisted knit half hitch cast on, and for this demonstration, because I'll not be casting on the large number of stitches, I'll also be using the magic loop for the circular knitting. You can see here that I've got 3 yarns. This top yarn is the working yarn that will go on to form the fabric. The twisted knit half hitch cast on is a member of the long tail family, so I need a tail yarn, and I'm using a separate ball of yarn of the same type as the working yarn for the tail end. The reason for this is if I'm casting on a very large number of stitches, I don't want to run the risk of running out of tail end because I've not left enough room. The third yarn you can see is a marker yarn. For the purpose of the demonstration, this is the same size as the working yarn. I would normally use a thinner yarn and a smooth yarn because it doesn't play any part in the actual fabric. It's just there so that I can see where the edge is and to help me count the stitches. If it's smooth, it's easier to pull out from the finished item. I want to remember which is the working yarn and which is the tail end yarn, so I'll just slip a stitch marker onto the tail end. It doesn't have to be a removable marker because before we start knitting the body of the fabric, we'll be snipping off the tail end yarn, so the marker will just fall off the end. Normally with a long tail family cast on, you'd use a single piece of yarn to form both the working yarn and the tail. So the first step is to make that single piece of yarn, and to do that I'll leave enough to sew in the ends and make a slip knot just to join those ends together, and I'll then place them on the needle to hold them and so that they don't slither all over the place. Again, the working yarn, the marker yarn, I don't need to sew in the end of this, but I want to stop it moving around, so again I'll create a slip knot, put it over the end, so that's just held in place so I know where it is. Because I'm using the decrease type of join, I need to create a stitch that I'm going to join with the last cast on stitch. So I just need to create a simple loop so that this, which would be the tail end, if a continuous piece of yarn, is at the needle end of the loop. So a little loop with the working yarn coming out from behind the loop. I now need to start casting on. So I'm going to cast on and place a marker every 10th stitch. So I'll start my cast on. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I wanted to mark every 10th stitch, so I'll just bring the mark around here. Wrap it around the end, placing it behind there. Then I cast on the 10th stitch and bring it to the front. And again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, place the marker stitch, 10. So that's 10, 20 stitches cast on. I'll continue until I've cast on 64 stitches. I've now cast on 64 stitches plus one extra stitch to make the join. We now have to join those in the round. First I'll explain the orientation of what I've got in front of me. Here are the last stitches I've cast on. So here the 4 after 60. This is the working yarn that I'll continue to work on the fabric. Here is the tail end that we now just need to keep and weave in. Here's the end of the marker yarn. This is the other end of the marker yarn where we started the cast on, and here are the working thread and the tail end from the start of the cast on, and again they just need to be woven in later on in the project. As you can see, because I've cast on far fewer stitches than called for in the pattern, the stitches don't go right the way around the needle. Therefore, I've got to use a magic loop technique in order to join. So what I want to do is take the working yarn that I'm going to continue and put that around the back. So the stitches I'm going to knit into are here at the front. And I also want to use a magic loop, so I need to bring a loop through here so that I can get the two working stitches close to the ones at the back. Just untie the needles. The other thing I've got to make sure is that I haven't twisted the knitting around the needles. So this marker thread has got to go neatly around the bottom. And it does that, as you can see here. Continues all the way down the bottom. Makes it easy to spot if I've twisted the stitches like that, because you suddenly lose the marker. When I did the cast on, I just held the working yarn and tail end with a slip knot. We don't need that slip knot anymore, we've finished with that. And I also held the marker yarn with a slip knot just to keep it out of the way, so I can get rid of that. So we're now left with, here is that additional loop that's going to be used for making the join. So I insert my needle purlwise into that and take it onto the cable, so it's sitting here with the other stitches on the far side. So now I just can start working the stitches, and in this case I'm going to be working in rib. So knit 2, give that second stitch a bit of a pull, purl 2. That tug was to help avoid laddering. Knit, knit, purl, purl. I've now reached the point where I've got 4 remaining stitches plus that loop on my needle. So I just want to knit, knit, purl, and here's the final stitch and the loop, and I want to join those together in a decrease, which, because it's a purl stitch, is a purl decrease. So now we're ready to start the next row of the knitting. And yet again, we just need to check that we have not twisted the stitches, and so we check that the marker thread is all the way along the bottom. And what we can do is just put the marker thread through there, because if you remember, we didn't have it going through at the start of the knitting. So I'm putting the stitches onto the needle to receive them and pulling the thread, pulling the cable, so that the stitches on the back are now on the cable, and we start again. And so there we are at the end of the second round, all ready to continue knitting with the rest of the pattern. So that was my cast on and join in the round for a project with a large number of stitches. That's how I use a marker thread to help me count my cast on stitches and help me avoid twisting the cast on edge when I join in the round. The show notes are at the URL that's shown on the screen. Until the next time, happy knitting!